Today, our Lord has a very important teaching for us, one that isn't maybe followed that as much as it should. He instructs us today, everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and the man who humbles himself will be exalted. Humility is a key virtue in our lives, and it's especially in the life of the Christian. It's the kind of thing that it raises up all of those who possess it. For us, we very quickly, maybe we could call to mind people who we know who are not humble, right? When there's not humility, when there's like pride, selfishness, self-centeredness, ego, vanity, these kinds of things, they muddy everything. It's like a poison that gets in and makes all the other virtues distorted. It dirties all of them. It's a poison that affects all of them. And we've seen this in our own lives, I'm sure, right? Where someone maybe even is doing something really good. Our Lord tells a story about a man who comes into the temple to make a great offering, a donation. Great, right? If you want to come to the church and make a big donation, I'll take it, right? Wonderful. But this man comes in, makes his donation, but he's so arrogant, right? He's so self-centered. He comes in and he's saying, Lord, look at me. I'm not like these people. Look at the great offering that I'm making. Aren't I so wonderful and so great? He's doing something good in his generosity, but it's poisoned. It's poisoned by his pride, by his ego. Pride, ego, it affects everything, and it makes everything way worse. Even good things, good actions. Kind of in an opposing way, or in a parallel way, humility is... Yikes. Humility is something, on the other hand, that doesn't bring down, but raises up. Whatever action you do, whatever virtue you're talking about it, if you do it with humility, it will be even more. Humility is like that spray that you spray on something, and it gives like this glossy coating where it becomes more brilliant. In the light, it shines forth, it glows even more. Humility is so good. It's so important. The scriptures speak about it repeatedly. In the book of Sirach today, lots of instruction about humility. We're told, perform your tasks with humility, then you will be loved by those whom God accepts. The greater you are, the more you must humble yourself, and you will find favor in the sight of the Lord. To the humble, the Lord reveals his secrets. And just a few others from James 4:6. He says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. If you are proud, not only is everything going to be poison, people will eventually figure you out, right? That it's for your own ends, your own ego, your own selfishness. But also God will oppose you. He will work to humble you. Saint Bernard, the great monk of the 12th century, was an abbot, and he became an abbot when great reform was needed inside of the Benedictine order. And so he was striving in order to set things right, to set them up on a better path. And one of the things that he was very insistent on, that he went straight to, was the importance of true humility. Not fake humility, false humility, but true humility. Why? Because humility colors everything. It colors everything that we say or do. If you're an arrogant person, even the good you do will be poisoned. If you're a humble person, the good you do will be even greater, even better. He throws out these three pathways where we can grow in humility. Kind of three important things for humility. The first one he outlines is contemplation of God. He wants us to see God as the author of all things that are good, of everything that is good. We can ask ourselves, can I see the hands of God in everything in my life? Am I able to look out and to see the work of God everywhere, that he is the author of all that is good? There's two different ways of looking at the world. You can look out and say, the world owes me. I'm entitled. I deserve. The world revolves around me. Or you can look out and say, I'm a pilgrim on this journey, and God is guiding me, and God is providing and leading the way. And I encounter so many amazing people along the way who are helps and who are guides. And I'm not the only one in this world, but I'm here with many others. Lucifer was the first one to get this all backwards, to get it all wrong. He had that mindset, non serviam, I will not serve. He also has that mindset, I did it on my own, and God had nothing to do with it. Terrible, and it's not true. For those of you parents and grandparents, this is a really important thing to instill into your children, to help them to see God is everywhere. The fingerprints of God are on everything. And if they can see that, that will be one of the beginning first steps towards true and authentic humility. And what we see is when we begin down this road of humility, it leads to great gratitude. If you can see the work of God in everything, then you're much more likely to want to give thanks, to have a real heart full of gratitude. The first one, contemplating God, being able to see the fingerprints of God everywhere, is a key to humility. The second one that he mentions, he says, remember Christ. Remember the humility of Jesus, who himself was humbled to the point of suffering the infamous death. He goes on to write, he became so lowly as to be compared to a leper. We have thought him as it were a leper, and as one struck by God and afflicted so much so that in his own time no one was thought to be lower than he. He descended so low that no one would believe him to be God. When we put ourselves next to Jesus, how do we stand? When we put our mindset, the things that we say and do, next to Jesus, does it stand up? Is that the path that we ought to be taking? Is that the road to humility, the road of Jesus? We see in him, as St. Bernard points out, that Jesus humbled himself so much. He's at the right hand of the Father, the second person of the Trinity. Not only does he take on human flesh, he doesn't, here in this world, he's not set up as a great king with great power and influence and money and reputation, but rather he takes the lowest place. And so low that it's hard for people even to think, could this man really be God? How could it be? Look at him. He's in an awful state. He has nothing. And even they kill him. How can he be God? But yet, so humble is our God. Look at him and imitate him. In the psalm we read, in your goodness, O God, you prepared a home for the poor, for those who are in need. If we are in need, God prepares for us. The final one, the third, he calls self-examination. Ask yourself where you are and where you are going. For the first one, where are you? Where are we at? We spoke about this a little bit last weekend, I think. The importance of being honest with ourselves. Looking and seeing inside of us the good, yes, of course, but also the darkness that resides in you and in me. For us, we are sinners. We have this element inside of us that strives to rebel against God, that strives for pleasure, self-pleasure, selfishness, ego, the opposite of humility. We need to come to terms with it and strive constantly to work against it and to overcome it with true humility. This idea, not just idea, this reality, but by the grace of God, there go I, will make us humble. We know that inside of ourselves, we could be like anyone else who we meet, who's in an awful state. That could have been you, it could have been me. To think about this, like, I could go to hell. I have everything I need, the desires, the temptations, all of that I could spend eternity apart from God, and how awful that would be. For parents and for all who are here, this is a harmful idea. None of the saints had this idea that we're all basically good. We're all, don't worry about it, just do whatever you want and you'll probably go to heaven. Where does that come from? That's been poison for our faith. It has led many people down a road to lukewarmness and has led many away from Christ, not towards him. What we see in the saints is the opposite. They long for Christ. They love him. They work against this darkness inside of them, and they strive to overcome it with all that they've got. This also points to the gospel that we heard today, as Jesus is telling this story of the wedding banquet, of not just sitting immediately in the place of honor, sitting down and saying, I'm going to go to heaven, don't worry about it, right? That's wrong, and you might miss it. But instead to take the low place, the place of humility, to say, I know I've got stuff I got to work out. I know that I can be better with God's help, and I'm trying to get there with his help. Where are we at, and where are we going? Our goal is heaven. Our goal is to be with Jesus forever. Remember last week the story of the lady who was taken into heaven and shown her house. And to her great surprise, it was this small, little, tiny house almost on the outskirts of heaven. And the angel told her, your house is so small because you sent up so little material with which to have it built. For us, we want to send up many supplies, many acts of kindness, charity, all of these things, so that we will be ready and prepared for heaven. Just one last thing, a more practical thing, with this self-examination, reflecting upon where we're at, where we're going. We could even take the second part of the gospel quite literally, when Jesus goes on to tell how this person was throwing a great banquet, and how they invited the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, because they are the ones who could not repay them. For you and for me, as we're thinking about our own lives as well, we're at parties, we're at little celebrations, we're with friends, with family, with different people and situations at work, all these things. Who do we hang out with? Who do we go out of our way to greet? Do we always go to those who we're friends, who we have a relationship with, who are easy to get along with, who maybe will say really nice things about us? Or do we, as well as Jesus asks, do we choose this humble way of even seeking out those who can't repay us, seeking out the poor, seeking out those who no one likes, who are hard to get along with, seeking out those who've been crippled by all kinds of different maybe hurts in their lives? How do we seek them out in true humility? For you and for me, seek humility. Seek it with all your heart. Because if we are humble, it makes all of our other virtues way better. It raises all of them up. The humble, they are able to shine and to glow. And even in this world, those who are prideful, it'll come out eventually. If it doesn't right away, it will come out. But for us, the more and more deeply we allow this virtue of humility to set inside of us, the more the glory of God can radiate and shine forth, the more and better witnesses that we will be for him.